What is going on, everybody? This is your host for Not For Long Media. Not For Long Media. Jack, I got to break this trend. This is Colin Thompson with the Colin Thompson Show. I appreciate everybody joining us today, tonight, wherever you may be. We appreciate you tuning in. Have to talk about our friends over at the original Fudge Kitchen, fudgekitchens.com, supplying fudge and sweet treats for all those on vacation, including Jack and others that are hanging out down the Jersey Shore, and then shipping fudge and sweet treats across the country for you, your friends, your family over the holiday season. Father's Day, huge holiday down the Jersey Shore, huge holiday when it comes to treating somebody to some fudge. There's going to be some interesting things going on. We're going to be giving out lots of fictitious fudge boxes this episode. One to Jason Myrtetus, who'll be joining us at 5:15. Again, this is Eastern Time, Monday, June 13th. Another edition of the Colin Thompson Show. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Lots to discuss going on in the world we live in today. So, series tied 2-2 between the Boston Celtics and the Golden State Warriors. We're going to get into the Nhl Playoffs. It's going to be the Lightning. It's going to be the Avalanche. The two favorites to start the year, you could say, have met in harmony now in the finals, both doing it completely different ways. Avalanches absolutely ran through the Oilers and swept them. The Lightning go down 0-2 in the series to the Rangers and come back, win 4 straight, finish that series up in just an unbelievable fashion the way they did that. What an unbelievable franchise. We're looking at a dynasty. And the one thing that I want to talk about probably next week, we're going to get into live golf here in a little bit, and we'll talk more about that next week as well. But just what we're watching in this world today with all-time greats, right? Like legitimate legends, arguments for top in their position of all time. There's a bunch of names to throw out here, but just hockey alone, Connor McDavid, I said it before, he will end up being the best NHL player, the best hockey player to ever walk the earth. Andre Vasilevsky, the goaltender, Tampa Bay Lightning. He will walk away as the greatest goaltender of all time. This Lightning organization is going for their 3rd straight Stanley Cup in a row. This guy is unreal in the playoffs. He's unreal in the regular season. He is the backbone of their dynasty, and they have some youth. He's still young. They still have plenty of time ahead of them. Who knows what happened to this final? They could win, lose, whatever it may be. He still may end up 3, 4, 5 cups. Tampa's an unbelievable place to play. Players want to take less to play there. A lot has to do with state income tax as well, folks. It's a lot cheaper to play in Tampa than in San Jose or in Toronto or in New Jersey Devils or New York Rangers or Buffalo Sabres. So taxes are implications too. They can pay players less because they would end up making the same amount of money with taxes that they played in, say, Buffalo. So that's just a real thing in a business side of thing when it comes to sports. So we're watching some greats in the world today, especially in the hockey world. Nathan McKinnon's one of the greats too in the game, right? He's up there in that conversation. He's not McDavid, but he's right below him. So lots to talk about there. But before Jason Myrtetus joins us, there's one thing I want to talk about, and it's something that always comes up when I'm in conversations with people about the NFL. And I think, today I was thinking about a few different topics to talk about, and this was just on my chest. And like, I don't want to talk about it. I always talk to people about it. But, the one thing that I think I want to get across to everybody that's a fan or maybe not a fan of the NFL anymore is, I should say this. I get a lot from people all the time is I don't watch the NFL anymore. I used to love it. I don't watch it anymore. It's too political. I want to run away from the politics, the political world. That's why I watch sports. And I understand it. And it's a fair point. I want to just help and educate people from a locker room's perspective. A lot of people also assume there's a lot of bad people in professional sports, especially the NFL. A lot of people that lose their money, just throw their money into the ocean in the NFL. A lot of people that don't treat people the right way in the NFL specifically. Again, these are stereotypes that are placed on football players. You lose money, you don't treat people well, whatever it may be. We all know what those cliches may be, those words may be. And, I was having breakfast today with a gentleman who I have respect for and got to know, and he still watches the NFL. And he says, what do I say to my friends that say, I don't watch the NFL anymore because of whatever reason? That I don't really think they're that big of fans to begin with. There's a lot of people that say they don't watch the NFL and they watch every snap. So you're telling me because based off of maybe someone who took a knee in a football game or someone who, drives fancy cars, who has maybe a flamboyant fun, social life, or may not be exactly like you. You're not going to watch this or support a product like that with your one viewership because in the back of the end zone, it may say a slogan that you don't support, or the back of the end zone, it may say something, or a player dances too much in the end zone. I'm just done with all that personally. Like, it's just getting annoying that people, I'm not going to watch the product because I don't align with somebody socially, politically. Maybe they're bad people. Maybe they blow money or they have expensive cars and they shouldn't do that. Well, what would you do if you were 26 years old and you had a couple $1 million in the bank? Also, what would you do? Or let me say it this way. I always say this. The locker room is just a microcosm of society. It's just a microcosm of society. There's 90 people in our locker room right now. I always say this too. There's 1 to 2 people on every team that I probably don't want to eat lunch with. That's just how it rolls, right? On our team in Carolina, I would eat lunch with every single player on our team, and that's no word of a lie. It's no BS. I would. And meeting lunch, meaning like if you're in the facility and you want to sit down and have a bite to eat with the guys, you would. I would sit down with every single player on our team and eat lunch. They're friends or I'm friendly with those 90 people. Say you're out to breakfast one day, look around, circle 90 people. Would you eat lunch with all those 90 people? I bet you 20, 25, 30 of them, if you knew what they watched on TV or if you knew how they spend their money, you wouldn't support them. So it's a roundabout way of me saying that the NFL is just a microcosm of society. It's probably a healthier version of society. We have fantastic conversations about race, about finances, about family, about building families, about friends, about the future, about what's wrong, about what's right. And we have cordial conversations about it in an amicable, respectful, loving, caring, deep-hearted way because our game, because of the physicality, because of the brotherhood it takes to be successful, our game is in a great place in that mark. So I just challenge the people that say I don't support the NFL anymore because of, or, whatever professional league may be. I'm going to speak on the NFL because I'm in it. I've been fortunate to play in this wonderful, wonderful league for a really long time. And listen, the locker room polices itself. The league may police itself sometimes more than others. But the bottom line is it's a wonderful place to go to work with a lot of wonderful people. And it's a topic that I talk about a lot. So I figured I'd talk about on the show today. And that's the awesome part about being an athlete and having a voice and having whatever viewers we have, 10 viewers or 10,000 viewers on this, listeners, downloaders, whatever it may be. I appreciate you tuning in. I think that this league's a great league with a lot of really great men, great fathers, great future fathers, great husbands, whatever you may be interested in. There's a locker room that supports you. And I think that's a huge, huge misunderstanding from the outside world is that, hey, listen, we're going to paint with a broad brush here because maybe a player wants to take a knee, or maybe a player wants to put, their fist in the air during the national anthem, or maybe a player wants to, take a step back and reflect on things and what they firmly believe. But that's our right as a country. I choose to stand for the national anthem. That has absolutely nothing to do with my brother next to me or my friend next to me or my teammate next to me. That's their choice. And that is the beautiful part of our country. Those that fought for our freedom. We thank them every day. And we have those conversations every day in our locker room. But the problem is they're not publicized because it's not a hot button topic. So I want to touch on a few things today that were on my chest. And that was really one. It's just, hey, listen, the NFL is a really good place with really good men and really good people. And, I've just talked to several people, in my travels around the country, around the world, or wherever I may be, or me and my wife may be. And it's always the conversation or, what's the team like? What are the guys like? What's the locker room like? Is it like what it says on TV? Is everything like the U 30 for 30 back in the day? No, guys are great with their money. Sure, there's a couple guys that make a mistake or two, but has anybody listening to this podcast made a financial mistake in their life? No, but it's not public. Our lives are public. So that's all I'm saying. I defend the league because I have to, but because I've been a part of it now for 6 years, it's been my lifelong dream to be in it. And just because it was my lifelong dream to be in it doesn't mean I need to support it. But I've got to see it from a few different franchises, from minor leagues to professional leagues. And it's a really good place with really good men that do a lot of really good things. So don't let someone paint a broad brush for you if you have that opinion and they're trying to bring you into the fact that, hey, that this is a bad place because of maybe a decision or two. So I usually don't get quote unquote political because I don't want to, whatever. upset anybody, but I'm not being political. I'm just being truthful about this NFL and this league that's meant a lot to me, and a space that's a really great space and welcoming new fans and growing endlessly. So to me, the crowd of, we don't watch the NFL and there's a large group of us that don't is exhausting, because it's not true. Look at the numbers, and numbers don't lie. A lot of great men, a lot of great people, and I'm blessed to be a part of it. I want to talk about our friends over the Original Fudge Kitchen, fudgekitchens.com. I always screw that up, Jack. And Jack's laughing at me in the back. Shipping, not switching. Shipping fudge, sweet treats across the country. There's no better thing than that saltwater taffy on a summer day. And the best part about it is you don't have to experience it to be at the Jersey Shore. You can experience it from literally across the country. And I've already shipped some down to some folks down here in Carolina. They are so jacked. The freshness, the quality of the box, it's how they wrap it in the wax paper when they ship it. It stays fresh 1-2 weeks. I think there's like a suggested limit of freshness, but I'll be honest with you. I shipped some down here for Christmas. This was obviously a couple months ago, several months ago, December. And out of nowhere, I kind of forgot about it. And it was like 3 weeks later. This may not even be good for the ad read, but I'm going to talk about it. 3 weeks later, the fudge was so fresh, still in the wrapping. Unbelievable. It was literally, they just made it. So, I mean, we're very blessed to have sponsors here at Not For Long Media that are friends of ours, that are products that I've supported. As you can tell by the baby fat that I trot around with on the NFL field, I absolutely love the Original Fudge Kitchen and all their sweet treats that they're shipping across the country. Fudgekitchens.com, the official sponsor of Not For Long Media. All right, so we have Jason Myrtetus coming on here in a few minutes. And again, Jason's a friend of the show. He's come on a few different times, and he is a great man, someone who operates the Flyers Daily podcast, the host of the Flyers Daily podcast, one of the top hockey podcasts, in the country, and does amazing work with that. An absolute stud. And we're going to talk about, a few different things in this goalie matchup, because Jason's got a ton of knowledge when it comes to goalies in the NHL. Someone who played, growing up, goalies, coaches, hockey, and has done a few different things. Well, before I want to get into that, I want to touch on one thing, and that's, what's going to Live Golf Invitational Series. And I don't know much about it, and I want to have someone who come on in the golf world that can talk about Live, because there are so many different things. It's Jack, you can get Jason in here if you could. That'd be wonderful. There's so many things going on with this Live situation, and I don't understand all of it. And next we're going to revisit it. But 5-month season, 8 events per season, 48 total competitors, $255 million total season purse, $250 million purse prize per week per event. So obviously the purses are absolutely massive. The money's massive. The season's shorter. I know some players have complained that every weekend is a golf event, and you kind of have to create your own season by missing events, and that's kind of a weird thing. I couldn't imagine by creating an off season by missing a football game or a hockey game. But that's neither here nor there. We'll talk about that next week, as well as a few other topics. So Jason Myrtetus is in the house, man. How you doing?
What's going on, man? On the mend.
On the mend. Yeah. How you feeling?
Doing better.
Yeah. Jason low under the weather last couple of days, but he's back. He's a hockey player.
I missed the shift, though. I'll tell you that.
Oh,
I did miss a couple. Wow. Stomach bug was no joke, man. It was like getting a Victoriaville goalie stick to your head. It just, and I thought my wife was like BSing me, because my daughter had it on Thursday and she had to miss her 5th grade commencement on Friday. She was devastated. And then my wife on, I guess it was Saturday night's like, oh, great, I have it now. And I'm like, you're just being dramatic. Like 90 minutes later, I'm there residing in one bathroom. She's got another. We were dueling. It was not good.
Posted up for the night, dueling it out.
It was like 2 days. Debilitating.
And now the recovery process begins.
I finally ate a little something today, so that feels good. I'm starting to feel a little like I'm coming out of the fog of it, but you don't know whether you're cold or you're hot. You're sweating because you're cold. You just like your whole body just like, oh my God, please just let this be over.
That'd be like me if they threw me a net for Game 7.
Let this be more over. Comfortable there.
Yeah, I bet you would. I would definitely not. As we transition, and I'm glad you're on the mend, man. That's great news. As we transition to hockey, obviously, lots to unpack here. This whole playoffs has been tremendous. It always is tremendous. The Rangers go up in the series against, the Lightning, and they win their first 2 at home. They go to, they're up 2-0, and then here come the Lightning back, and they absolutely just, run through them. In some closer games, don't get me wrong, but here comes Vasilevsky and the team and the boys and Coop, and their veteran presence across the entire lineup, from Perry and Belmar at the bottom of the roster to, Stamkos and Kucherov and Hedman at the top of it, and Kalorn and all their guys, Jernak.
Palat was a monster.
I mean, it just continues to grow.
Yeah.
I was talking about it before you came on, and how I said I think Andrei Vasilevsky will end up being the greatest goaltender of all time. I've said it before in the podcast. I think Connor McDavid, when it's all said and done, will be the greatest hockey player of all time.
I believe it when it comes to Vasilevsky. I don't know if I'm there for McDavid, because like, to be the greatest, it has to come with accomplishment. And in a salary capped NHL, I don't know that he'll ever be able to match the accomplishment of a guy like Gretzky, because he eats up so much percentage of the cap. I think he's at like 14 or 15% of the cap. And Gretzky didn't have to worry about percentage of the cap, right? So it's harder to build a team that can be these dynasty teams. But we're sitting here right now and we're looking at a team. Tampa's won back-to-back cups, right? And they've not only won back-to-back cups in unique circumstances, they've also done it in a flat cap world. But it speaks to their advantage that they have. They have an advantage of no state income tax in Florida. And I think it's a distinct advantage, even though they're paying Vasilevsky $9.5 million now. The first year he was only making, I think, $4.5 million. And then last year he made $9.5 million, and the same with this year. But they have guys on what look like team-friendly deals because they still bring home more money. When you look at Kucherov's contract, you look at Stamkos' contract, and remember when he was a free agent, it was a big thing. Is he going to leave? And he ended up staying there for a little bit less money, but it turns out to be more money than you would if you went somewhere else because of the tax situation. So they're a great team, man. I mean, they're unbelievable. And like you mentioned, I mean, look at a guy like Pat Maroon, right? You talk about a depth guy. 91 playoff games in the last 4 years, because he won the cup with St. Louis back in 19.
Yep.
So,
what's your third line? Perry, Belmar, Maroon?
Yeah, and like, Perry can still play. Like, I thought he was cooked 5 years ago, but he can still play. He went to a cup final last year too, so he's played a lot of hockey. But was in the cup final for Montreal last year. So, I mean, these guys just find roles on that team. And look, I think it's easier to find a role, Colin, on a team when you have so much high-end talent to fall into your spot and get favorable matchups, and it's an advantageous position to be in as a veteran player. So I think that's part of it. But they've just done a great job building that team, and we're going to look back in 10 years and we're going to say that's one of the best teams of all time.
Yeah, it slots everybody back, right? It's the same argument with the Flyers when we talk about the Flyers, and we'll get into their coaching carousel here when we finish up with the finals. But it slots everybody back, and that's why when we talk about the Flyers, I'm like, everyone pause the brakes here. You need to add some really high-end talent here before you start talking about team and what's happening. Like any team, football, hockey, basketball, I've made this argument before. Like if you have really good backup offensive linemen that are like former starters in the NFL, like you're in a really good situation. We've always talked about the Eagles and their strength in offensive line. Like I think it was like who was their backups at one point in time? Well, Jason Peters was a backup. Like you're talking like legitimate starters, and I'm not in football mode right now, so they're not coming to my mind.
Yeah, like Sayamalo was a backup, but was a starter.
Vaitai was a backup.
Yeah,
he's a starter in Detroit. Yeah. Like that.
So they knew what to expect if they got put in there, right?
Yeah, and it backs everybody up. It slots everybody back. Like that's a third line that teams would want to have of Perry, Belmar, and Maroon. Like would love the jam of that line on the third line for a hockey team. Maybe not in the current landscape of the NHL with all the scoring, but I mean, those guys can score.
And they can do a lot. Third D pairing with Sergachev on the third. Yeah. I mean, he'd be in a top pair on a lot of teams, you know.
So they're a fun team to watch. Coop's a fun coach to support. Yeah, like his press conference the other day, he's just like, Torts was right. Like we just built, those guys are just some, I think he's something I molded a monster or something like that. Like the player, it's the guys, that's at the end of the day. The players know that, the coaches know that. Coaches know how to press a button or two to maybe turn a guy up. Have you ever been a part of a system or a place? You've covered the Flyers now for years. Like who was the best Flyers coach now going back to then that like, knew when to press the buttons when the buttons need to be pressed?
Yeah. Some coaches are, every coach is different. You've seen this throughout your athletic career as well, both as a player for me and covering sports and everything. Mm-hmm. Every coach is different in the way they manage, because I always thought that was maybe more of a proper word for a pro coach was manage. A guy that manages all the egos, manages not only their emotion, their energy, their, all elements of it. Because to get through a Stanley Cup playoff, you have to have been managed well in the way that you push buttons, when to push harder, when to hug, when to scream, and those kind of things. because it is as much emotional exhaustion and physical exhaustion as it is everything else. And I always think the coach that manages that part the best gives himself the best chance. You need a little luck along the way, but that's why I think sometimes in sports, a coach at a second job has more success than the first because he learns to manage. They can't just be go, go, go like it is at younger or lower levels. At that level, you're dealing with professional athletes and grown men that know how to take care of their bodies, know how to take care of their minds, and know how to control their emotion, that you have to have that part of it. And I think that's what Cooper is so good at. Like, he's a good X's and O's guy and all that, but all these guys are relatively good at that, But he's a guy that just seems to have this finger on the team. When I look back at coaches that I've covered really closely, Peter Laviolette was one of those guys. He was very demanding and very intense, but he also knew when to dial back a little bit. And, those coaches that coach on a little bit of the feel of their group, and he had that. Like, for instance, just his usage of timeouts, I thought was something that's not really lauded in hockey, usage of a timeout, but he knew when to do it to get the most impact out of it and when not to do it, which I think is almost equally as important, or when to pull a goalie, when not to pull a goalie. And that's why I think Tampa Bay, they come into that conference final against the Rangers, and there's a little bit of rust there because they had the 9 days off, but they used it to their advantage. And once they got down 2-0 in game 3, down 2-0 in the series, they found a way to slow the Rangers down. They all knew what they wanted to do. And I thought it was something that was really interesting that Steven Stamkos said after game 3. He goes, for the first time, playing against the Rangers and Shesterkin, we're finding out what it's like to play against us, what it's been like to, and I thought that that self-awareness was really that's what it's been like to play against us the last 3 years with Vasilevsky, right? To pour everything into a goal scoring opportunity, just to have this guy do something miraculous and rob you is incredibly defeating. And for a player's mindset, shift in and shift out. And I thought that was really a lot of awareness by Stamkos. No shock that it comes from him. And he's been great. But, man, they're a great team. They're going to have their hands full in this final, though, because this Colorado team can match them skill-wise. But we'll see if they can match them emotional-wise and keeping themselves under control in this moment, because no stage will there's no stage bigger than playing for the cup. When that cup's in the building, it. There's a magnetism to it, and you're in the final.
And Tampa knows how to handle it. Coop knows how to handle it. I mean,
yeah. Does Bednar and McKinnon and McCarr and Rantanen and that group know how to handle it? That's the question.
You think they will, right? It's going to be a great series. Like, it's going to go back and forth. I think your biggest question mark is going to be, what's going to go on in net here. Is Kemper coming back for Colorado?
Yeah, he will be back. I mean, they're going to get Kadri at some point here, maybe around game 3. They're hoping so. It's weird though. You have basically the two best teams in the league. You can say Florida was the best team because they were the best in the regular season and Tampa swept them, but the team with the highest pedigree in the Eastern Conference, back-to-back cups, and still incredibly good with very little attrition to their roster, facing the best team in the West in the Stanley Cup final. Can't beat that.
No, the NHL got exactly what they wanted. You mentioned the Rangers a few different times. And as someone who watches the Metropolitan, division pretty closely, I mean, they're loaded for the future. They're a major problem moving forward, as the Flyers have a lot of question marks, a lot more question marks than answers. That's for damn sure. And then the Caps are are they on the way out? Zovia, when we're pushing them, and Backstrom and those guys, who's playing in goal for them? I mean, the Rangers seem like, the walk away team to beat now, in the East with Tampa moving forward.
Well, Carolina's still in there for me as well. I don't know. The Rangers are going to be interesting next year, because I thought a little bit of it in the first half of the season was smoke and mirrors, and they were getting bailed out by great goaltending. And the advanced metrics kind of proved that in the beginning of the year, but then they kind of tightened things up. But, they scratched Kakko in that game 6, how he handles that moving forward. He said the right things, that he wants to play in New York and he's a restricted free agent. They're going to lose Strome because he's a free agent and he's out of there. So they are a little thin in the middle. And can you sustain what they're able to do? They have a lot of dynamic talent with Zibanejad, Panarin, obviously. Kreider, he's not going to repeat what he did this year, but he'll still be a good player for the foreseeable future. And obviously Adam Fox on the back end, and some of those lingering other pieces they have there as well, Trouba. And Shesterkin, I mean, he's the ultimate equalizer. But Are they a team that's going to be legit there at the top? That's going to be interesting to see next year. I'm not completely sold that they will be. They're a playoff team, no doubt about it, but are they going to be at the same realm they were this past year? I don't know that yet. They still got a little bit of proving for me. And Gallant teams perform really well in year 1 and year 2, and then they tend to fly south permanently. So we'll see how he handles it as well, if he learned from some of the mistakes he made at future stops in Florida and Vegas and otherwise.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with New York, right? Like, are they going to be able to respond? Like, how teams respond to losing is like everything, right? That's the only thing. Like, responding to winning is the easy part. It's almost hard. I think, yeah, responding to losing.
Yeah. It's hard
They're
to
both
respond
hard.
to losing. Yeah.
Yeah. Because responding with winning sometimes can put you back relaxed, and that's how impressive what Tampa's doing. And everyone's like, "Oh, they won in a shortened season. Oh, they won in the the bubble." That's harder, I think. Yeah. The bubbles. I mean, I played in a bubble in the NFL. It was really hard. I mean, it was a way different social. It changes the whole picture of how you do pro sports, how you do sports in general. For me, changed everything. Changed the place where I rented my house. Changed the place how we did holidays. I mean, that's real human beings. Like, I went on a little lecture and a speech here about before you came on, and just about how people bring broad strokes, and I'll speak for the NFL of. Oh, the guys blow through their money, and the guys, they're, everyone's taking a knee and everyone's doing this. And I pump the brakes. There's a lot of great conversation. There's a lot of great things that go on in this league of guys not spending all their money, guys being great parents. It's just 1% of the 1% that you hear about, just like our media today. We need to get into that. But my point is, like, there's a lot of great things, and I don't need to go down that rabbit hole again, but that's where I kind of went down today of, just that COVID, that bubble is such a challenge. And I have nothing but respect for what Tampa's done. I talked about state income tax too right before you came on, and someone that played in Tampa and the XFL, I'm like, take me back there in a minute. Like, what a great place to play. Someone said before, or we talked in here before, I said, what's the 2 franchises? Can you name 2 franchises you want to own in pro sports? I said, Tampa's number 1. Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, everyone's like, why don't you say the Yankees? I don't want to live in the Bronx.
Yeah.
I want to live in Tampa. I want
to
go
to a good way to live down there. That's why players love it.
There's a great little bar right next to it too, called Hat-Tricks. It's a hockey bar. I was jumping out of my seat. So I'm rambling on, Jason, per usual.
No, but you're right though. Like, a lot of times we lose that perspective that the athletes are human beings, and that they don't have some of the same stresses. We tend to equate money with lack of worry. Which I think
like,
is
why are you stressed? Literally a conversation we just had in the building the other day.
Yeah, you make $8.5 million a year. Why are you stressed? It's like, okay, I still have, I'm still a human being, and you live within your means. At least you try to. Some do it better than others, but yeah, I mean, there are things, and being away from family and all those things, they affect those people. Just like when Drew was trying to make the decision on traded, and people were, well, why don't you just go here? Why don't you just go there? He's not a mercenary. There is other considerations of 2 young boys and a wife, that he has to consider those elements of it. So, yeah, that element of, looking at athletes like their machine, they've been constructed for this, I think is a bit insensitive, frankly. Yeah. But some people just want to look at it that way, and they want to compartmentalize their sports like that. But that's just not the way. That's not the reality of the situation.
No, it's not reality before, and the whole like kind of shut up and dribble thing. That was that was kind of how the conversation started with someone I had today. I go to sports as my escape. I'm like, it's still an escape. Just choose to take the content in as what you please. Okay. Right, point blank period, right to the point. Trots or Torts?
Well, I mean, my first choice would be Trots. And the ball's in his court, or the puck, I guess, in this metaphor, is in his court. I believe that the offer has been made, and it's substantial. He hasn't made a decision yet. I know that Winnipeg, through some reporting that I've read from Elliot Friedman from Sportsnet, is saying that they're talking to other people because they want Trots too, but they don't know that they're going to get him. So maybe they're getting a little worried now. So they're starting to consider some other options there in Winnipeg. He's a finalist for the Flyers. If he wants the job, it's his. It's that simple. So if it's not him, I think that the likely plan would be to go to Tortorella. It's kind of who I sanctioned from the minute AV got fired. I didn't know Trots would be available at the time, but I mean, to me, it's Trots then Tortorella, and that's where you go. I know Tortorella wants the job. talked to enough people that know him personally and that he's been pretty outward about it, that he wants the job. He wants to come to Philadelphia. I think he'd be good for it. There's a lot of narratives out there about Torts that, oh, great, he'll be burned out of here quick and he'll be gone. He's got a short shelf life. Well, the numbers don't support that. Fact of the matter is that he's averaged 5.2 years at every one of his coaching stops throughout his career combined. The National Hockey League average is 2.4 years average, which is crazy low. But
yes,
he's a guy that, other than in Vancouver, where he was for 1 year, has had at minimum 5-year stints. 5 years with the Rangers, 6 years with Columbus, and 7 years with Tampa, 1 year with Vancouver. And the other perception is that players hate playing for him, and that's just flat out bullshit because they don't. Find me any documentation of a player who says they hated playing for him. You won't find it. And players are outspoken nowadays. You find I've talked to more than a dozen guys that have played for him off the record. So there's no agenda here. I'm not writing a story or anything like that. And they've all told me they loved playing for him. As long as you play the game honestly, that's the word that kept coming up, is not for yourself and play it with the team game in mind, you won't have any problems with him. And all the bluster in the media, all that does is take the crosshairs off the players. And players love when the crosshairs come off them and they go on the coach.
And he can handle it, obviously.
He does it on purpose.
Yeah, he does it on purpose, right? He's fantastic.
He knows he's lightening the load on the players, which is why he does it.
So I'm a Chicklets fan. I respect what they do. I like their interviews. I like the guys they have on. I love the show. I listen to Missing Curfew. I listen to your podcast. I literally consistently roll through it. It's my escape from football. So everybody who talks about him loves him. Now, there's other coaches that they talk about it. I'm not going to say names, but there's coaches that everyone's like, nope, hate that guy. Every single guy, they like, not Torts. I'm saying just random coaches around the league. And there's a couple guys that have coached for some big franchises. They're like, nope, hate him. When it comes to Trots, why has he been let go of the Capitals? Win a Stanley Cup. We're not going to re-sign you. Go to the island. Have some pretty good success. Tough year in the island. I think it was the first 17 games they're on the road. They're building a new arena. Some injuries. A tough Metro division. And he's gone. So he's been gone now from 2 places after going to massive deep runs. A Stanley Cup and a conference final, I believe, once or twice.
2 conference finals.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, 2 conference finals and then didn't make the playoffs this year, and he's out. I was surprised because I think Lou Lamoriello is a really smart guy. I was surprised that he did it. There must be something there with some of the players, probably the younger players. And, he's a guy, too, that knows his cachet and knows that it's his way or the highway. And I remember him before the bubble. The Islanders rather were reeling bad. I mean, they had lost, I think, 15 of 17 games before the pause in sports. They weren't going to make the playoffs. And one of those last games, he benched Barzell for the second half of that game because he wasn't doing the right things on the ice. So there was probably some sort of rub that way. And Lou, I guess, thought he could get something better. As far as with the Capitals, I mean, he won the cup and then left. I think that was a little bit of, vindictiveness of Trots to go into his final year without an extension. And was like, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to win the cup. Then I'm going to leave. And he did exactly that.
Yeah.
But I mean, he spent 15 years in Nashville. He was the original coach there. And it took a while to get things going in Nashville. And he left him in good stead. But he's a guy that's done a good job. And he's been a good coach everywhere he's been. I mean, his style certainly is not the most exciting to watch. It's not an offensive. It's everything's from the crease out, which is why you see the numbers for his goaltenders are always good. Always good. I mean, you look at the Islanders before he got there, the 17-18 season, Doug Weight was the coach, Jack Capuano, then Doug Weight, and they gave up the most goals in the league. And they had Thomas Greiss and Jarl Halak as their goalies. And it was, geez, these goalies stink, blah, blah, blah. Then the next year, Tavares actually leaves that offseason. So they're minus Tavares, one of their best defensive forwards. And Trots comes in with Mitch Korn as the goalie coach, who always goes everywhere Barry goes, and installs his system. And they gave up the most goals under Doug Weight, and they come back the next year and they give up the least goals in the league. They shaved 102 goals season to season. Gave up the least amount with the same goalies and minus John Tavares.
Yep.
And you go, how the hell is that possible? 100. I mean, that's more than a goal a game. Think about how big that is in a hockey game, where the average amount of goals is 5.5. It's huge. So he's a guy that preaches his system and structure, and defensive structure lends to predictability, and predictability lends to really good performances from goaltenders. So if the Flyers were able to get Trots, the player that would benefit most would be Carter Hart.
And would be massive, right? As the cornerstone of the franchise, like you and I've talked about. And the one thing when I'll tweet in, and you always read my tweets whenever I do sometimes, so I appreciate them, was, you have the piece. You have the piece you need. Carter Hart, right? The bottom line is he's your guy. You're going with him. He's the cornerstone of the franchise. I think they're both a win-win for Carter Hart because I think Torts would probably handle that situation, especially media-wise for Carter, like you talked about before, which has been some things before that Elaine kind of said and was a little bit weird with the media and Carter. And then just, I don't know, kind of out of touch, it seemed to me.
That caused him to lose the team a little bit.
That was weird.
That was the beginning of the end, I think.
I've never seen anything like that in sports.
Didn't make any sense.
Yeah, it was very weird. And then, later on, Trots with the goals against and all the different things they do defensively. I think it's a win-win for both of them. I could already see Torts as being an absolute legend in Philly and kind of revitalizing the fan base. Probably needs a little juice, a fan base that's extremely loyal, that always fills up the barn. But a guy like Torts comes in, lights things up, signs a couple probably key veterans that are needed, some cheaper guys that are probably a little bit more affordable. Put your GM cap on for me, Jason. I'm sure you've been asked this a few different times. Who are you signing this offseason? Because they need to make some sort of move. But they don't have a ton of flexibility.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of cap space to just go out and add and not subtract. So it depends on what they can subtract first, whether that's JVR's contract in a trade or whether that's, I think the more likely route for substantial, meaningful talent addition to this roster is going to have to come through a trade. And you're going to have to trade something to get something. So you're going to lose something as well with a guy like a Provorov or a Konechny or something like that if you're going to make something pretty earth-shattering. Unless they can shed that salary and then you can get in on some of those players. I'd be really careful about Johnny Gadreau. One, because he's going to get paid. He's coming off a great year. And he is a great player, but I do worry about him being able to perform come playoff time and also what it costs for a winger. I don't like to allocate that kind of money to a winger. So I got to be real careful about what I do in that regard. So I'm looking more in the trade market to do stuff. But, I'm not in a rush to do stuff this offseason either, even no matter who I end up with as a coach. I look at this as more of a 2-year process because next year's free agency class and next year's draft are paramount importance. So if I scuffle along and I'm a playoff team this year, okay, I'm fine with that. If I'm not and I have a shot to get in the lottery and I can get lucky and land Connor Bedard, then that's franchise altering. So to me, it's one of those things where I'm not rushing it this offseason to make all these changes like it's going to be the last NHL season played on earth.
Tough offseason for Chuck Fletcher. And I thought last year, and I'll never forget this, we were flying to an away game and you did a recap after probably like 10 games. You went through every player they signed and were like Brassard and Yandel. They're going through all the guys, all the different pieces, right? Jones and how well they did. This is early in the year.
Yeah.
It's a great episode. You were going through like plus minus, comparing them to Nolan Patrick and the guys they shipped out. I was like, man. And I thought he signed a great group. I thought early on, I said, this is perfect. Yandel's going to come in with depth, right? Be the 7th guy, 6th guy, power play. Awesome. And then you got Brassard, who was like kind of circled. It was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Like he's pretty good from Arizona. Like he's done some good things there. He's been a part of some, decent situations going on there before they've kind of in the situation they are now. What happened last year? Is it just Ellis, the big piece going down, and then it all just unraveled from there?
On the D side, yeah. I mean, because then all of a sudden now Braun's got to move up, and now Yandel's got to play with, Nick Seeler. And that's just not a good situation. If Yandel would have been shielded, had he been playing with a guy like Braun on the third pair on the right side. And then, you look at all the injuries up front too. I mean, just so many guys ended up, having to take on a much bigger role than they're ready to take. And the injuries just, when you're losing your 1, 2, and 3 centermen, and you can't win. You can reincarnate Scotty Bowman or Toe Blake or whoever. They weren't going to win with this team with as many injuries as they had. And it got ugly and compounded. And I guess if you're going to have a bad season, you might as well let it get really ugly, and it did. You know, and then you couple all that with AV having lost the team, and Mike Yeo put in an impossible situation in an unforgiving league, and it just are they as bad as they were last year? Well, they were last year because that's what the record said they were. But are they are they as bad as they looked last year? Probably not. But you are relying on Ryan Ellis's health. That means so much. And Sean Couturier, who I don't have any fears in Couturier, but he is still coming off of back surgery. So I guess there's a little fear there. So, and those are obviously really not just important players, but I'd use the term consequential players to your entire lineup because of what they bring to the table. So can they be bitten by that same injury bug 2 years in a row? Sure, why not? But we'll see if that is the case. And I mean, so much is predicated on Ryan Ellis, though, not only for this year coming up, but his career as a hockey player. If he can't go again this year, then you got to be going. You got to LTIR him the rest of his career, which is no problem. It comes off your books, or if he retires, it's even better for you because the cap recapture goes to Nashville, not you. And I will tell you that I would still make the trade for Ryan Ellis today, knowing what I knew from last year. I would still make that trade. I mean, you give Phil Myers and Nolan Patrick. What did you give up? You really didn't give up anything.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's crazy. Hope they do something. Real quick question before we wrap things up. And I'll have two more questions for you. Why is Rick Tocchet not in the conversation? I know he's the Flyer and I get all that stuff and he's doing a nice job on TV. And why isn't he in the, why isn't his name coming up more in this coaching carousel?
He did interview last week with the Flyers. I do know that. He is not considered a finalist. Toc will be a perfect assistant coach, but I also think Toc does not want to leave TV. I talked to some people that know him this past week a little bit, and he likes the TV gig. You're not getting judged on wins and losses. You travel first class everywhere you go. The hours are much better.
Yep.
Guys over at TNT are making a boatload of money. I think he's enjoying it, and yeah, he's interviewing out there, keeping his name out there, and if the perfect situation came, maybe he would look at it, but I don't think this situation will be perfect for him. And he's done some decent things as a coach, but he's still got a lot to prove. There's a lot more pedigree out there right now than Rick Tocchet, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's a lot of big guns out there coaching wise, especially with what happened in Boston as well too. So
yeah.
Okay, finally, I have Tampa in 6. I think they're going to win it. I think they have too much depth. I think you have too much horses and proven equity in what they can do. Love their coach. I do think Avalanche have, the Avalanche have a great team. Got to see them live in Nashville. It was just a joke to see them undress Nashville. Neither here nor there. Tampa in 6. Who you got?
I'm going to take Colorado in 7.
Oh, so at home, Colorado wins it at home.
Yeah, they may be a scruffy start to the series like Tampa with the Rangers because of the layoff. But I think that the layoff pays dividends come game 3 and forward. Yep. So I think Tampa, I wouldn't be shocked that either team won it, obviously, but they're both great teams. But I just think this might be Colorado's turn.
All right. What are we putting on this? A friendly wager? I can't do money. I can't legally probably do money, but we could do probably a product of something. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll figure something out.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll post it.
Yeah, maybe some razors.
Right.
Looks like we both could use them.
Future sponsor, Gillette, sponsor of the NFL. Not for long.
Yeah, they just sent me a nice package too.
Oh, would you look at that?
Somebody tweeted me and asked me about how I shave my head, and I said I use the Gillette Mach 3 turbo blades in the shower with soap, and it gives me a perfect shave. And because I mentioned that, they DM'd me and they sent me a nice package of Gillette Mach 3s and a new handle.
And a nice Gillette bag, too.
A nice bag, yeah. It was I was like, I wasn't looking for that, but hey, if you want to send them to me,
absolutely.
The price of razors, man.
Influencer Jason Myrtetus.
Damn right. CCM and Gillette.
Oh, you love it. You love it. Jason Myrtetus, check his podcast out, guys. Flyers Daily does an unbelievable job. And big news with Jason Myrtetus and some friends and coming down the road from our end, too. So yes, good stuff. Appreciate you, brother, as always, and looking forward to getting you back on. We'll see what happens in the finals.
Sounds good, man. Thanks.
Big thanks to Jason Myrtetus. Again, everything's brought to you by the official sponsor of Not For Long Media, the original Fudge Kitchen, fudgekitchens.com. Take care of your dad this Father's Day. Give him some fudge. Maybe he likes that saltwater taffy that he remembers that he used to get down the shore when he was a kid. Treat him to something nice this Father's Day. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Lots to look forward to here at Not For Long Media. Have some new podcasts joining us. Have some new friends joining us. I appreciate everyone's, ears and eyes on my first segment there, because it's something that means a lot to me. Just the painting of the broad brush and the misunderstanding. And that's why I think things will change over the years. There's more player-driven podcasts. There's more guys that have a voice, whether people listen or not. They're still having a voice. And, I'm very thankful that I have a voice here, and I'm thankful for our listeners that make it possible, and I'm thankful for the Fudge Kitchen for their support. Again, check them out, guys, fudgekitchens.com. That was Jason Myrtetus. He took your Colorado Avalanche in 7. I took your Tampa Bay Lightning in 6. It's going to be a great series. NBA Finals, tied 2-2, game tonight, Monday night. So a lot going on in the sports world here as we head into the summer. Baseball's in full swing. Mets are on a hot streak. Phillies just lost. They were on a massive hot streak. Check out our friends at Breaking Bats, guys. Their podcast, fantastic. They run our baseball section of The Fun with Brian O'Grady, Justin Ayers, and the team over there with Sean and just the whole gang. We have an awesome team at Not For Long Media. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Mandatory minicamp this week. Lots to look forward to there. Just a continuation of our OTAs and getting everybody in the building with mandatory minicamp is always fun. Great time for us to bond. And we are practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then on the road for the summer. So we're going to get in some fun stuff here this summer. We're going to have some barbecue guests on talking about what they're grilling out this summer. We're going to have some players on talking about what they're doing. And then fast forward to training camp, we're going to have Not For Long Media down at training camp with us here in Carolina and maybe some other places as well, too. They'll pop up, too. So we're covering a few different things. We're staying busy, staying active. And this is the Colin Thompson Show, and I appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks.